Just say a word, and the old hand next to me manifested the illusory shadow of a phoenix. When I accidentally said a word, in the radius of 100 meters, the desert miraculously grew lush and dense mud. Just as I spoke the two words, time, force in the void, instantly sealed my mouth shut.
Oh, baby.
Just it's because I, who crossed into this different world, discovered that Chinese is the divine language here. As long as I speak it out in Chinese, I can make things happen accordingly. However, what I didn't expect was the entrance exam this time for the Crimson Sect turned out to be comprehending the Chinese words in a painting. In everyone else's eyes, this is the heavenly secrets that can only be understood after 10 years of cultivation. Soon I was called up by the examiner. As soon as I got on stage, my looks immediately attracted the attention of a group of girls. Although they admired my appearance very much, they didn't have high expectations for my intelligence. When I clearly saw the so-called divine language, I slowly opened my mouth, 吸收灵气, and suddenly felt strands of cool breeze gathering from all directions. Then they all drilled into my body. This shocked the examiner Suzhu next to me. How could I chant the ancient divine language without anyone teaching me? He asked in shock and bewilderment. Have you learned the ancient divine language before? I shook my head, then said this is very simple. Simple? Suzhu directly questioned. Then let me say a sentence of the ancient divine language, and you try repeating it. Before I agreed, Suzhu had already chanted a sentence of the ancient divine language. As soon as he finished speaking, his body slowly lifted off the ground. I listened closely. It really was Chinese. Seeing Suzhu flying up, the boys and girls below were very excited, but before they could react, I also immediately uttered two words, 御风. As my voice fell, I felt my body float lightly off the ground. I had always dreamed of flying. Now my dream has finally come true. Compared to my excitement, Suzhu was shocked. He didn't expect me to really fly up. Suzhu was both shocked and delighted. This child's comprehension is terrifying. Simply a monster. The heavens really bless my Crimson Sect. But not long after, my body that had lifted off the ground fell back down. Why can't I fly up? Haha, it's because you don't have enough spiritual energy. Just now you only absorbed a wisp of spiritual energy, barely allowing you to fly half a meter high with the wind. I nodded. Since it's related to spiritual energy, then I'll have to absorb more of it. Immediately I shouted in a low voice, 加倍吸收灵气. This time even Suzhu could not understand what I just said. The originally calm surroundings suddenly stirred up violent wind. The surrounding spiritual energy all converged towards me, and I only felt my bones in my limbs let out a crisp sound. Very comfortable. At this time Suzhu showed an surprised expression. Such speed of absorbing spiritual energy is only seen in those few elders and the sect master of Crimson Sect. It's still not enough. Immediately I loudly shouted again, 3倍吸收灵气. As soon as my voice fell, the surrounding spiritual energy surged. The speed increased again. Each wisp grew thicker. Impossible. This has already far surpassed the cultivation sensation of my Crimson Sect. Suzhu had long been shocked speechless beside me. I felt a lot of spiritual energy pouring into my body. Instantly I felt a powerful force gathering in my four limbs and hundreds of bones. My bones let out a crackling sound, like beans popping. At this time I felt that with one punch, even rocks could be smashed. Just then, a figure descended from Crimson Sect and landed in front of me, dressed in light blue gauze clothes, with blue hair draped casually over her shoulders, giving a feeling of ethereal charm. I felt the person before me was so beautiful. I didn't expect this task to even attract the sect master of Crimson Sect. The sect master asked directly, how did you do it? What's written here are the most basic cultivation techniques, so I modified it a bit. With just one sentence from me, this charming sect master's face revealed shock. Very simple. As soon as I said this, one disciple directly refused to believe it and blurted out, 银剑. A long sword then appeared in his hand. If you can really repeat the ancient divine language, then try this one again. The sect master of Crimson Sect and Suzhu also wanted to see just how strong my comprehension was. They did not try to stop him. I listened clearly, smiled faintly, and said, 分解. Wrong! That pronunciation is completely different. But the next second, the long sword he had condensed with spiritual energy directly collapsed. No one heard clearly what I had just said. Only the sect master of Crimson Sect felt a ripple of spiritual energy from me. Did you also comprehend this? I guess so. Just the reverse of the ancient divine language I said earlier. As soon as I finished speaking, I imitated him and said, 鸣枪. A long spear floated in my hand. The sect master was already shocked by my comprehension at this time. She said I would immediately be allowed into the sect and promoted to be an elder of the sect. Since I also wanted to find out what this so-called ancient divine language was all about, I agreed. Then I followed the sect master to the main hall. First, she introduced herself as Luo Zi, the sect master of Crimson Sect. Of course, I also had my reasons for doing this, because the ancient divine language you spoke just now already matched our sect's strongest chi cultivation technique. So I want you to impart the cultivation methods you comprehended to Crimson Sect. At this time, I appeared magnanimous. After all, Luo Zi immediately made me an elder. Then I slowly enunciated the method of absorbing spiritual energy from before. 3倍吸收灵气. But just these simple 6 words, Luo Ziying tried repeatedly before barely managing to remember them. After all, this was considered extremely difficult to repeat for the people of this different world. As she slowly recited, triple absorption of 3倍吸收灵气, a huge amount of energy instantly converged towards her from all directions. It worked indeed. The excitement was written on her face. She then turned to me and said, "Your comprehension really is too monstrous. To actually evolve higher level techniques from ordinary methods." I immediately stated, "This is nothing much. I can even further strengthen that ancient divine language." "You've comprehended an even higher level of the ancient divine language." I sneered inwardly. "Forget triple. Even if it's quadruple, fivefold, it's still a piece of cake for me," I directly said. 4倍吸收灵气. Luo Ziying immediately stopped me. "This spiritual energy is too powerful. It's dangerous. Your body won't be able to withstand it." But it was clearly too late already. I saw an even more massive amount of energy converging towards me. The next second, I let out a heart-wrenching scream. Just when I was about to reveal my cultivation technique that absorbs 4倍吸收灵气 in front of the pretty sad master sister, I didn't expect my body couldn't withstand the massive influx of spiritual energy, and I screamed out in agony. I didn't anticipate that absorbing so much spiritual energy would be so painful, but I didn't stop. Instead, I gritted my teeth and painfully uttered 2 more words. 淬炼. As soon as the words left my mouth, the previously enormous spiritual energy was directly completely absorbed by my body. Luo Zi beside me had long been stunned speechless. As the sect master of Crimson Sect, her innate perceptiveness was naturally not lacking, but compared to me she was practically fuming with rage. Just what kind of demonic monster is this? And at this moment all the spiritual energy had also been completely absorbed by me. I was very curious to know what level I was at now. Luo Zi explained, "You haven't even reached the most basic temporary realm yet, but with your speed of absorbing spiritual energy, you should be able to step into the temporary realm within a month." Little did she know my cultivation speed was beyond what this brain could comprehend, but it didn't really matter. Within this Crimson Sect, I still needed to check out the so-called skills and techniques. Only by fully understanding these derivations could I better utilize my golden finger. And so with a disciple under me, we entered the hall where the cultivation techniques were stored. "Oh, isn't this Shirley who's at the 3rd year of the temporary mirror realm? Why is there also a newbie who hasn't even reached the temporary mirror by his side?" Cheng Yan's voice was full of ridicule. "Cheng Yan, this is the new elder of Crimson Sect. You must not be rude." Hearing this, the few disciples present burst out laughing. "Shirley, are you an idiot? He hasn't even reached the temporary realm with his abilities. You think I can't see that?" But before he could finish speaking, I bellowed lowly, "Shi Shui." The next moment, a gigantic stone hammer appeared before Cheng Yan and ruthlessly pressed him into the ground. Ling Ling into fall. This was a martial skill only those in the vaporization realm could perform. A useless trash who hadn't even defeated the temporary mirror. How could he possibly? Fear filled Cheng Yan's eyes. I looked at them indifferently. They naturally did not know. This was not some martial skill at all, but the ancient divine language. Only its might was not very strong yet. Cheng Yan arduously walked towards me, and the next moment, he actually bowed with clasped hands before me. It was this disciple who had blind eyes, and failed to recognize the elder's presence. "Please forgive me, elder," I nodded to indicate, and was too lazy to bicker with him. After all, I still had proper business to attend to. Immediately after, I picked up a cultivation technique and started reading, but my actions immediately attracted the surrounding disciples' attention again. Who reads cultivation techniques like that, thinking you can actually understand by reading like a book? What a pretentious act. But in a short while, I had finished reading the entire cultivation technique. These masses of words could be summarized in one sentence, which was 吸收水元素灵气. I uttered the sentence. Instantly, the water elemental spiritual energy around me gathered over. The disciples who were mocking me just now had faces of shock looking at me. How was this possible? That guy didn't seem to have reached the temporary realm yet, and his speed of absorbing spiritual energy was just monstrous. I naturally noticed the people around me, but I didn't bother with them one bit. Everyone had different attributes. Cultivating different techniques could increase one's strength faster. I also didn't know what attribute suited me. Next, I picked up a technique called Fire Net Trap, flipped through it briefly, then spit out a few words. 吸收火灵气. In a flash, a stream of fire-attributed spiritual energy gathered into my body. The surrounding disciples were all dumbfounded. That was fire-attributed spiritual energy, right? But he had just absorbed water-attributed spiritual energy. Next, to the shock of everyone present, I swiftly absorbed spiritual energies of various attributes, until I stopped after absorbing the lightning attribute, because I discovered some cultivators were innately aligned with 2 attributes. 2 attributes were much stronger than just one. Meet wind with lightning, lead lightning with wind, wind and lightning in tandem. As soon as the words left my mouth, the spiritual energies around immediately changed. The lightning spiritual energy was absorbed by me, bringing the wind spiritual energy along, and the wind spiritual energy carried the lightning spiritual energy with it. In an instant, the 2 attributed spiritual energies surged into my body. At the same time, I felt some subtle changes occurring in my body. A bottleneck was directly shattered. In that moment, even more spiritual spiritual energy poured in. I had actually directly broken through to the temporal realm. The spectating disciples were practically frightened to tears by my monstrous perception. 2.5 hours to directly step into the temporal realm. This was something no one could accomplish. Even I myself was quite surprised, because Luo Zi had said it would take a month to enter the temporal realm and become a true cultivator. Yet now I had only used 2.5 hours to enter the temporal realm. I smiled slightly, quite satisfied with my cultivation speed. With my conversion between the ancient divine language and cultivation techniques, my speed had indeed increased tremendously. But I was also curious. After I had converted the techniques into the divine language, at most it was comparable to lower tier spirit level martial arts. Crimson Sect should also have disciples who comprehended lower tier spirit level martial arts, but I hadn't seen cultivation speeds as fast as mine. I also didn't know why. Perhaps this world simply could not explain the charm of Chinese. Chinese is invincible. Now that I understood the techniques much better, next should be the mystical arts, as those were fundamental for combat, and so I also swiftly comprehended spiritual energies of various attributes. In a flash, 7 attributed spiritual energies erupted from my body, but I was very confused. The various attributes seemed largely consistent, with no distinctions of strength and weakness. So what exactly was my attribute? Could it be because I used Chinese that these differences were offset? But since the absorption was uniform anyway, I needn't bother which suited me or not. Then I bellowed lowly. 吞噬全属性灵气. In an instant, extremely powerful spiritual energy continuously poured into my body. Next, I opened my mouth again. 淬炼. Immediately, all the spiritual energy became even more refined. The next second, they coalesced into a pillar of light shooting straight into the clouds. Suddenly, countless colorful clouds appeared in the sky. Everyone who saw this phenomenon of heaven and earth revealed looks of shock. It must be some great power breaking through a realm again. After doing all this, I immediately headed towards the testing grounds. Since I couldn't discern a suitable attribute myself, I should try the orthodox method. I walked straight into the depths of the hall, but was stopped by 2 disciples right at the entrance. This was the path for Crimson Sect's elders to enter. Disciples cannot step in. I smiled and took out the elder's waist tag. The 2 disciples were greatly shocked. What? This is the elder. I was about to go test my attributes, but I stopped before a door. Sect Master, how can you let a newcomer who hasn't even reached the temporary mirror realm become an elder of the Crimson Sect? One of the elders said. The other elders also voiced their doubts. That's right. After all, I had just entered the sect and leapt up to elder. It was inevitable some would be dissatisfied. At this time, Sect Master Luo Ziying was the first to speak. Not only can Su Tong comprehend the ancient divine language, he can also strengthen the ancient divine language. If you don't believe, this Sect Master guarantees that in less than half a month, Su Tong will be able to reach the temporal realm. Hearing this, I then walked through the door with ease, facing everyone's gazes. I did not feel the slightest apprehension, but kept smiling as I walked towards the center of the main hall. The next second, the smile on Luo Ziying's face was instantly replaced by shock. Elder Su, your abilities. How is this possible? Also in shock was Elder Su Zhu. In half a day, from an ordinary person to reaching the temporal mirror. How is this possible? The other elders also widened their eyes in fright. Reaching the temporal realm in half a day. Is he still human? He's simply a monster. Luo Ziying also laughed unreservedly for the first time, and gave me a thumbs up. I had thought these elders would suppress me for a period of time, but relying on my horrifying perception talent, I had dissolved her worries in half a day. Luo Ziying was now reassured, since there were no objections. Then let's prepare to begin the test. She looked at me again. This time, please demonstrate for everyone. Elder Su, to facilitate everyone in choosing their future cultivation path. At this time, Elder Su Zhu paused and continued. It's worth mentioning, Elder Su Tong arrived at Crimson Sect just now, and in half a day reached the temporal realm. Everyone can take Elder Su Tong as your goal. These words made everyone discuss in shock. Although they had never cultivated before, they had heard of the cultivation realms and knew how difficult it was to enter the temporal realm. Yet the one before them, similar in age to them, had entered the temporal mirror in half a day. Next, I slowly walked to a black stone tablet in the center of the testing hall. The buzz of discussion grew louder now. Could someone really do that? Did he actually start cultivating long ago and just happened to break through today? They were naturally unwilling to accept this. A newcomer who had just joined Crimson Sect, a newbie in the temporal realm, how could he become an elder of Crimson Sect? I paid no heed to these opinions. After all, they simply did not know how great the charm of Chinese was. Then I gently placed my hand on the testing tablet. In a flash, a cool sensation spread to my palm. Shortly after, a red glow bloomed from the black stone tablet. Red light meant the fire attribute physique, but right after, a green light also blossomed. The wood and fire dual attribute physique. One elder who had opposed me earlier cried out in surprise. But just as his words fell, a blue light appeared. The water attribute physique. How was this possible? Fire and water cannot coexist. How could one person possess the water attribute and fire attribute, and also the wood attribute? A 3-attribute physique. Everyone revealed looks of disbelief. But soon someone said, when one person has 2 attributes, 3 attributes, those are signs of great power. But if one tries cultivating all attributes, the cultivation speed would be exceptionally slow. So having more attributes is not a good thing. But before they could finish being shocked, the testing tablet suddenly emitted rainbow glow, illuminating the entire testing hall in an instant. Everyone stared dumbfounded at the 7-colored light. What attribute was this? The 7 attributes. How was that possible? Sigh. Don't know if this is fortune or misfortune. There were many well-informed and experienced elders present, who also recognized my physique was rare indeed. If all 7 attributes could be raised, it would definitely be invincible. But if not, these gifts would only be burdensome. The 7 attributes. The corners of my lips curved up. For others, cultivating all 7 attributes would be absolutely impossible, and choosing just 2 or 3, they would fear mutual restraints. But I did not have such worries. Cultivating all 7 attributes would just take a sentence. Luo Xin hesitated for a moment and continued speaking. Elders, you have all witnessed Elder Su Tong's test results just now. Do any elders have opinions? The 7 attributes converging in one person. Unheard of, unprecedented. In all of Ask the Heavens continent, no one with the 7 attributes in one body has ever appeared before. Elder Zhu Hongwei helplessly shook his head. At this time, the silent great elder Shangxi also slowly spoke. If 3 attributes converge in one body, it would definitely be fortune for our Crimson sect. But if 7 attributes, perhaps it would hinder Elder Su Tong's growth. Elder Su Tong, what do you think? Luo Xin looked at me and asked, cultivating them together. I did not hesitate one bit. Wasn't this obvious? Of course it was cultivating them all to become supremely powerful in the future. Elder Su Tong, perhaps you still don't understand what the 7 attributes represent. There are parts that complement each other, beneficial for increasing your abilities, but also mutual restraints. If the slightest mistake occurs, the consequence would be body swollen and death. The second elder kindly reminded me now. Before my arrival, he had been very against me becoming an elder, but after seeing my perception and talent, and these powerful attributes, if I grew in the future, it would definitely benefit Crimson Sect. As Crimson Sect's second elder, regardless of purpose, he would hope for Crimson Sect to become powerful. So now, he was explaining the pros and cons to me out of concern. I understand. Mutual promotion and restraint. Since there is restraint, there must also be promotion. As long as I grasp the balance, it will be enough. This is no joke. I think Elder Su Tong could try cultivating just 3 of the attributes, and suppress the rest to the minimum. That would be safest. The Great Elder spoke now as well. That would be the safest approach. I agree with the Great Elder's opinion. Achieving balance with 7 attributes would be extremely difficult, but with 3 attributes, with Elder Su Tong's talents, it should be simpler. The second elder nodded. That's the safest approach. Luo Xin did not speak, but looked at me, although she also felt cultivating 3 attributes together would definitely allow me to reach the peak, and Crimson Sect could rely on me in the future to become a powerful sect in Ask the Heavens continent. But if cultivating 7 attributes together, success would not be guaranteed. At this time, I also smiled and said, achieving balance with 7 attributes may not be impossible. My tone was full of confidence. Arrogance. Do you know how difficult it is to balance 7 attributes? The Great Elder was angered now as well. Although I had amazing talents and perception, such an arrogant attitude would surely lead me astray. I bellowed lowly, 吞噬全属性灵气. Hearing my words, Luo Xin and the elders' expressions changed dramatically.